The night after Linda's burial, my daughter's fiancé leaned over and said I should sign over my company and $3 million estate while I still had my mind. My daughter's silence stabbed deeper than words. Later, I opened Linda's old jewelry box and found a hidden letter with the truth. Not love, not comfort, but a secret sharp enough to cut their empire down. They'll regret every word. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I still remember those long nights at the steel mill, the sting of metal in the air, the hum of machines that never seemed to stop. I worked double shifts, sometimes 3 days in a row without real sleep, just so my daughter Sarah could attend college. Tuition was $40,000 a year, and every time I handed over that check, I told myself it was worth it, that her future mattered more than my own broken back. I remember the day I bought her that used Ford for $25,000, the way her face lit up as if the world had opened for her. And when she married, Linda and I paid for a wedding that cost nearly $75,000, even though we knew it would mean putting off the new roof we needed. I gave up vacations, the trip to Yellowstone I always dreamed of, just to keep food on the table and Sarah's path clear. I remember nights when Linda and I ate beans and rice, smiling at each other while Sarah enjoyed steak at school with her friends. Those sacrifices were my gift, my pride, and now those same sacrifices feel like shackles around my chest. Because Sarah stood silently while David, the man she calls her fiancé, called me useless and discussed taking everything I had built, that silence hurt more than the words. It was the moment I realized that all those years of giving may have taught her to take me for granted, to see my love as weakness instead of strength. The house we live in is worth $350,000 today, but for me, it has never been about the number. That house holds the echoes of Sarah's first steps, the smell of Linda's Sunday pot roast, the sound of Christmas mornings when wrapping paper flew across the floor. The oak dining table in the corner still has the scratches from when Sarah did her math homework, pressing too hard with her pencil. On the mantel, the family photos look back at me now with a kind of cruel irony, smiling faces frozen in time while the present is filled with betrayal. This home was meant to be Sarah's safe harbor, not a prize for a man like David to snatch. I run my fingers along the walls and feel every memory pressing back against me, warm and familiar, yet now poisoned by the thought that they see this place as nothing more than a dollar sign. The couch in the living room used to be where Sarah cuddled between us while we watched old movies. Now it feels empty, the silence in the room thicker than any laughter that once filled it. The very walls feel like they are grieving with me. What was built with love has been reduced in their eyes to an estate to carve up, and that breaks me in a way I cannot explain. While sorting through Linda's belongings in the bedroom, I found a wooden box I had never noticed before. It was tucked beneath her wedding veil, wrapped carefully as if she wanted me to find it only when she was gone. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a sealed envelope and a stack of bank records, names, dates, and transactions. It told a story I never imagined, funds moving quietly into accounts connected to Evelyn Miller, David's mother. My heart pounded as I read the lines, each entry proof of something ugly. And then Linda's handwriting, delicate but firm. If I am gone, you must protect this truth for Sarah. She deserves to know. My breath caught. The betrayal was bigger than David's greed. It was tied to a family with dirty hands, a past Linda had uncovered but carried silently. I felt anger, sorrow, and a strange kind of gratitude. Linda left me the weapon I would need, but it was also another wound. She had carried this secret alone, shielding me, shielding Sarah until her last day. My love for her deepened, but so did the ache of knowing she suffered in silence. I sat on the edge of the bed with those papers in my hands, tears streaming down my face, but through the tears, something shifted. I had been broken, yes, but in that moment, I felt the ember of resolve spark. The pain became fuel. I thought to myself, I've trusted too much, given too much, let them walk over me because I wanted peace. But Linda, in her quiet way, had left me the strength to fight back. From the cracks in my heart, determination began to grow. I could almost hear her voice whispering, "Stand tall, Tom. Do it for Sarah. Do it for us." For the first time in weeks, I lifted my head with a sense of direction. I wasn't going to let David or Evelyn strip away the life Linda and I built. That night, I sat in the living room with the papers spread across the coffee table. My phone buzzed with messages from Sarah, words that read like apologies but sounded empty now. I stared at them, felt the sting in my chest, then pressed delete. One by one. Gone. I whispered into the air. Linda, I'll do what you asked. I'll keep Sarah safe, even if she hates me for it. My voice cracked, but the decision was clear. It was a small act, deleting those messages, but it felt symbolic. For the first time, I wasn't chasing Sarah's approval. I was standing firm. I turned off the phone completely and slid it into the drawer. That silence was heavy, but also freeing. The living room looked the same as it always had. The beige sofa, the lamp with the crooked shade, the old grandfather clock ticking in the corner. But it felt different now. The sofa, once a place of comfort, pressed down with loneliness. The clock ticked louder, as if it were counting down to something inevitable. The air itself felt charged, heavy with memories and with the weight of what was to come. I leaned back in my recliner, staring at the ceiling, and realized this home, this place, filled with laughter, with Sunday dinners, with love, was now the battlefield. My heart ached with grief, but my mind was sharpening with clarity. The man who walked into this room yesterday was broken. The man sitting here tonight was ready, ready to fight, ready to protect, ready to expose the truth. And as I closed the wooden box and set it back down, I whispered one more time into the silence. They think they've won, but this is just the beginning. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 1 below to let me know you're here with me. I woke up the next morning with a heaviness in my chest, but also with a strange kind of energy that hadn't been there in weeks. The night before, I had sat in silence, clutching the wooden box and Linda's letter, but today I knew it was time to move from remembering into action. My hands, once trembling, felt steady as I reached for the phone. I dialed the number of my attorney, Michael Collins, a man I had trusted years ago when I first drafted the will with Linda. His voice was calm and warm, the kind of voice that could anchor you when the world around you felt like it was cracking. I told him what I had found, the bank records tied to Evelyn Miller, the whispers about David's schemes, and my fear that Sarah had been dragged into something too dangerous. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Tom, we need to act quickly. I want you to come into my office this afternoon. Bring every document you found. We'll make sure your estate is protected before they can get their hands on it." I hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long time, I felt my lungs fill with something like control instead of panic. Driving downtown to Collins's office, I noticed how steady I was behind the wheel. Just last week, I had been shaking, afraid, unable to think straight. Now every turn of the road felt deliberate, like each mile was carrying me closer to reclaiming myself. When I walked into his office, the smell of polished wood and leather hit me, and I saw the thick stack of papers waiting on his desk. He motioned for me to sit, and I placed Linda's wooden box on the table between us. His eyes sharpened as he leafed through the documents. "These transactions," he murmured, "are enough to question their entire legitimacy. And if David is pulling Sarah's name into this, it's not just immoral, it's criminal." He drafted the freeze orders, protecting my accounts, my property, and even the title to the house. When he slid the papers toward me, my hand no longer trembled as I signed. The pen moved cleanly across the page, my signature bold and unbroken. Collins smiled slightly. "Tom, you're doing the right thing. You're taking back control." Later that afternoon, I went to the bank. I asked for a meeting with the branch manager, a young woman named Emily, who looked at me with genuine concern as I laid the papers on her desk. "Mr. Walker," she said softly, "are you sure you want to freeze this account? It's nearly $200,000. I nodded, my voice clear and firm. "Yes, it's mine, and I won't let anyone else take it." She looked at me with a kind of respect I hadn't felt from my own daughter in months. "All right," she said gently. "I'll make sure this is secured. And are you okay? Do you have family looking after you?" Her words cut through me like glass, because here was a stranger, someone who owed me nothing, showing me more care than Sarah had in weeks. I forced a small smile and said, "I'm fine. I just need to protect what matters." As I signed her forms, I noticed how steady my hand was. The man I had been broken and betrayed would have faltered. But today, my lines were straight, bold, certain. That evening, David called me. His voice was dripping with arrogance, the kind of tone that made my stomach tighten. "Tom," he said, "I've put together some numbers I think you'll be pleased with. If you're smart, you'll transfer your house into Sarah's name now. It'll save you taxes, and let's be honest, you don't have the strength to manage it anymore." He chuckled like he was doing me a favor. I sat there listening, saying nothing, my silence pulling him deeper into his own performance. He rattled on about a $200,000 investment, about plans, about how Sarah was on board. I knew every word was a trap. I jotted down notes quietly. Every detail another nail for the coffin he was building for himself. He thought my silence was weakness, but it was the calm of a man who had already seen the ending. 2 days later, Sarah and David came to the house. They arrived with folders and spreadsheets, looking polished and smug. Sarah's eyes were tired, but she stayed close to him, letting him lead. He spread the papers across my dining table, the same table that once held Sarah's birthday cakes and school projects. "Here's the plan," David said smoothly. "We liquidate certain assets, free up cash, and secure the future. It's logical. It's inevitable." I sat in my chair, leaning back, arms crossed, just listening. The house that had been filled with laughter now echoed with the slick sound of his words. He didn't notice how little I reacted, how my eyes didn't flinch. He took my silence as compliance. He mistook my calm as surrender. At one point, Sarah tried to appeal to me. "Dad," she whispered, "this will make things easier for everyone. We can make sure you're taken care of." I wanted to shout, to shake her, to remind her of every sacrifice I'd made. But instead I looked at her, steady and cold, and said nothing. My silence was louder than any argument. It unsettled her. I could see it in her shifting eyes, in the way her hand trembled slightly as she slid one of the papers toward me. David jumped in quickly. "Don't worry about the fine print, Tom. We'll handle it. All you need to do is sign." I stared at the paper, then slowly pushed it back across the table. My voice, when it came, was calm. "Not today." That night, back in Collins's office, he handed me another set of documents. "I did some digging," he said. "David Miller has debts, serious ones. Medical bills, credit cards, even a personal loan he put under Sarah's name, $47,000 tied to a hospital account. He's been using her as a shield." My blood boiled. My daughter, my flesh and blood, turned into collateral by a man who claimed to love her. Collins laid down one last sheet. "And this could be the key. He's connected to a failed investment scheme. It's all public record. One lawsuit could bury him." I felt the anger rise in me, but it was no longer the kind of anger that breaks a man. It was the kind that sharpens him. Walking home that evening, I felt a strange kind of peace. My shoes crunched against the pavement, the night air cool against my skin. For the first time in months, I felt taller, straighter. They thought I had been beaten, but the truth was I was just getting started. I placed the papers carefully in my old leather briefcase, the same one I carried to the mill every day for 30 years. It felt heavy in my hand, but not with burden, with power. As I shut the door behind me, I whispered into the empty room, "They think I've lost, but the game has only begun. If you've ever been dismissed, ever been treated as if your years of sacrifice meant nothing, I want you to comment on one word: respect. Because that's all we ask for, after a lifetime of giving. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 2 below to let me know you're here with me." They came to my house just before sunset when the light turns the living room a soft gold and the dust in the air looks like slow snow. I had opened the curtains wide on purpose. I wanted every face clear, every expression obvious. The old oak dining table was cleared except for a legal pad, a small recorder, and a neat stack of folders that Michael Collins had helped me prepare. The air felt thick, as if even the house knew this was not an ordinary evening. I could hear the grandfather clock in the corner marking seconds with a stubborn tick, the sound used to soothe me. Tonight, it felt like a drum calling everyone to attention. Michael stood by the window with his briefcase latched. He wore the same navy suit he had on when he helped Linda and me write our first will. His posture was straight and easy, but his eyes were alert. 2 chairs away sat Mrs. Green from next door. She brought a plate of oatmeal cookies that she never intended anyone to eat. Her hands were folded tight in her lap, as if she needed to hold them still. On the sofa, my old friend Eddie Alvarez leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. We worked the line at the steel mill for years. He watched me like a lookout posted on a roof. When Sarah and David stepped into the room, the whole place held its breath. David wore a pale gray jacket and the kind of smile that has no warmth behind it. He kept one hand on Sarah's back as if guiding her, as if directing a scene only he could see. Sarah's eyes searched the shelves, the photos, the lamp with the crooked shade, as if she were trying to remember how to be a daughter in this house. I could see a small tremor in her fingers when she tucked her hair behind her ear. Behind them, Evelyn Miller walked in with a perfume that hit me before I saw her pearls. She gave the room a quick sweep, cataloging value the way a broker does. The framed pictures, the rugs, the clock, and then, at last, me. "Thank you for coming," I said. My voice sounded steady. It surprised me a little. "Let's sit." We took our places around the table. The chair at the head was mine. I had sanded that chair years ago when the finish scratched. I remembered Linda handing me a cold lemonade, the way sunlight fell in a square across her arm. I set my palm on the table now, flat and calm. The wood felt cool and honest. David smiled with his teeth. "Tom, we appreciate you making time. This will be quick." He slid a folder onto the table and fanned out a few pages like a magician, revealing the first trick. Spreadsheets, projected returns, a printed email thread with a bank logo at the top. Though I noticed the address line did not match any branch in town, he started to talk. Cash flows, liquidity, tax efficiency, and generational planning. He said the words as if the quickness of them would carry me past the meaning. "I got a message this afternoon," he said, tapping one sheet. "The transfer of the house title should be simple if you sign tonight. We move it into Sarah's name now. That unlocks options. We can take equity, about $150,000, to start, and put it into a short-term vehicle. Think of it as breathing room. Later, we can package the rest. Your house is worth $350,000 on paper, but we can make it work like more." Sarah copied his smile, but hers wavered. "Dad, it means we can take care of you. Bills, repairs, everything." She looked at the clock, then back at me. Michael cleared his throat gently. "Mr. Miller," he said, "you should know the title is already protected." His voice stayed kind, but the words landed heavy. "There's a recorded notice. Any attempt to encumber the property without my client's consent is void." David kept smiling, but the skin around his eyes tightened. He flipped to another page. "No problem," he said too fast. "Then let's discuss the accounts. We have identified places where cash is just sitting. It should be working. There are 200,000 we could deploy right away." I let the quiet stretch. I wanted to hear how far he would walk. He took the silence as an invitation and kept going, with the ease of a man who mistakes patience for surrender. He pointed to lines and boxes. He talked as if I were a stubborn obstacle on a job site instead of the man who earned every dollar he wanted to move. "What about the hospital invoice?" I asked, calm as a cool morning. "The 47,000 in Sarah's name." That was the first crack. David's eyes flicked to Sarah before he could catch himself. A small movement, barely a breath. But I saw it. Evelyn's hand tightened around her purse. Michael did not look away from David's face. Sarah reached for the paper as if the paper could save her. "Dad, it was a temporary thing," she said, voice soft. "It was just to help bridge an investment," he said. She stopped there, looked at David, then looked away. "Mrs." Green let out the faintest sound, not a word, more like the sound someone makes when they see a child about to fall. Eddie shifted in his seat, knuckles whitening, then settled again. I slid a folder from my stack. "One point," I said. "Documentation matters." I opened it slowly. The top page showed transaction dates and routing numbers. Michael had put colored tabs on the edges like flags. I turned the first page, the second, the third. I did not speak. I let the paper speak for me. The room listened. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a car door closed, and a dog barked twice and then stopped, as if even the neighborhood knew to keep quiet. "These," Michael said, "are transfers tied to accounts controlled by you, Miss Miller." He nodded at Evelyn, respectful but clear. "There is an older pattern as well, a past investigation. No charges, but the paper still exists. Names, firms, dates. It casts a shadow." Evelyn's mouth tightened. Irrelevant, she said. The single word was clipped sharply, like a thread cut with small scissors. We are here about family. You are dredging up old gossip to embarrass me. Family, I repeated, not loud, just steady. I put my hand over Linda's letter without lifting it. Let's talk about family. I turned to Sarah. Do you remember the summer I taught you how to paint the fence? I asked. You wore my old shirt. It hung on you like a sail. You asked if we could do it white or blue. We compromised and chose cream. Your mother laughed because you kept painting your shoes. You said, "Does this make me an artist?" And I said, "It makes you the kind of person who finishes what she starts." Sarah's eyes filled. For a second, the woman who stood beside David faded, and the girl came back. Then David moved his hand to her back again, firm, and the girl was gone. "Let us be practical," he said with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Tom, you are making this harder than it needs to be. I have already lined up buyers for some of your other assets. This is bigger than one house. We can roll out your portfolio in phases. There is a window now. If we miss it, values slip. Everyone loses. I am trying to protect your legacy." Eddie exhaled hard through his nose. "Legacy," he muttered, not at anyone, just into the room. "That's a fancy word for loot." "Enough," Evelyn said, turning to him. "You are a neighbor, not counsel." Mrs. Green folded her hands tighter. "He is a witness to good sense," she said quietly, as if telling a child to lower their voice in a library. "And I am a witness to Tom's mind. He has never been sharper." Michael raised a palm, easing the room back from the edge. "We are not here to trade insults. We are here to make facts plain." David leaned forward, elbows on the table, and lowered his voice as if we were conspirators together. "Tom," he said, "sign the authorization. Let me move the house now, move the accounts after. We will set aside a care fund so you never worry. It is what Sarah wants." He nudged the pen toward me. "You do not want to fight me in court. It will be ugly." "All this," I said, and touched the pages he brought. "And you forgot your best argument." He blinked. "What argument is that?" "That I am tired," I said. "That I am old. That I want peace. That I will sign anything to keep you pleasant and Sarah smiling. That I will trade truth for quiet. You have counted on that, son." His mouth flattened. "I am only trying to help. You were not helping when you stood in my living room and spoke about carving up my estate while my wife's flowers were still fresh," I said. I kept my voice level. I kept my words slow. "You were not helping when you put a hospital debt under my daughter's name for $47,000. You were not helping when you boasted to your friends at dinner that someday soon this house would work for you. I heard that. I stood on the sidewalk and heard it through the open window. I also heard you and your mother discuss selling this place and taking equity the day after the wedding. When the signature's dry, we move. Do you remember that, Miss Miller?" Evelyn's skin went a tone paler. "You are mishearing. The details are complicated. You do not understand finance." I understand greed," I said. "I worked with men who scraped copper wire into their lunch pails and called it nothing. I know the sound a lie makes when it walks into a room." Sarah took a breath, then another. "David," she said, "did you say that?" Her voice shook. He did not look at her. He looked at me. "You cannot prove any of this," he said. Michael reached into his case and removed a thin device. "This is a recorded statement," he said. "You made it when you thought you were alone. The law allows my client to record in his own home. Your words are your words." He set the recorder on the table, but he did not press play. Not yet. "Before we listen, there are letters that matter." I slid a fresh folder forward. Linda's handwriting on the first page looked so alive it hurt. I took a breath, then read aloud. "If I am gone, you must protect this truth for Sarah. She deserves to know." I lifted the page, and beneath it lay the bank statements, the wire instructions, the shell company names that matched Evelyn's past. A tidy web. Not large enough for a courtroom by itself, maybe, but more than enough to show pattern and intent. Michael placed a certified copy of the trust amendment beside them, with its blue ribbon and embossed seal. "Recorded yesterday," he said. "Effective immediately. All major assets move to the Walker Family Trust with strict safeguards. Discretionary distributions for health, education, maintenance, and support. Sarah is protected. No third-party control. No spousal claim. The room fell into a silence, so complete I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. David's voice, when it came, arrived loud and harsh, as if to break the quiet by force. "This is coercion," he said. "You are manipulating an old man. You and that lawyer. And you, Sarah, you are letting them." "Do not use my name like a rope," Sarah said, sudden and bright, as if something in her snapped free. The sound of it startled even her. She pressed her hand to her chest, then lowered it. "Answer the question. Did you put the debt in my name?" His face closed. "It was temporary." "Answer it," she said. "Yes," he said. The word dropped like a stone into a still pond. Ripples moved outward from it, touching every corner of the room. Evelyn turned on him. "You told me it was handled," she hissed, the pearls at her throat trembling. "You promised me the accounts were clean. You said the old business would never surface. You said—" Michael pressed the button. The recording played David's voice in this very room from nights ago, low and unguarded. "Those idiots think I'm their fall guy. I am not taking the blame for this. Do not put my name on anything. Nothing ties back to me." The recorder clicked off. The clock ticked 3 times. No one moved. Mrs. Green spoke first, gentle and steady. "Tom is not confused," she said. "He is careful. He is calm. He reads what he signs. He checks his locks at night. He brings in my mail when I am visiting my sister. He notices which kids in the neighborhood have a new bicycle and which ones need a warm coat. He is not the man this young one paints him to be. He is decent, and he is clear-minded." Eddie nodded. "I saw him carry steel through 30 summers. I saw him take the worst shift so someone else could sleep. When Linda got sick, he still showed up on time. Washed, shaved, sleeves buttoned. If he says this is wrong, it is wrong. If he says he has a plan, he has a plan." David laughed then, but the laugh broke in the middle, like a poorly welded seam popping under strain. "This is a circus," he said. "Neighbors, cookies, recorders. You want a show? Fine. Here is my letter." He slapped down a page I recognized. An old note Linda had written years ago when we were drafting our first will. In it, she had circled a line about providing for Sarah and her future family. He pushed it toward me like a dagger. She wanted me to be included. She said so, right there. I picked it up. The paper was thin and smelled faintly of paperclip rust and the drawer where it had been kept. I read it. I remembered the day. The coffee Linda spilled on the second page. The way she wiped it and laughed. That day her hair had been up in a clip, and her lipstick wore off onto her cup. "She did," I said, and slid the letter back to him. She wanted Sarah to have a safe family. She wanted kindness. She wanted a partnership. She did not write, "When your future husband uses you as a shield for his debt, give him the house. Do not drag her good words through your bad ones." His jaw jumped. "You are twisting everything." "You are the one twisting," I said. "You are trying to turn love into leverage. You are trying to turn grief into a gateway. It stops now." He pushed back from the table so hard his chair skidded and wobbled. "You will regret this, old man." I stood slowly. My knees complained, but my stance was solid. I felt the weight of the house behind me like a spine. "I doubt it," I said, "because I am not alone, and because truth is heavier than you think." Michael placed one final document on the table. "Notice of litigation hold," he said. "All communications, records, and electronic devices related to your solicitations must be preserved. We have filed notice with the court. A temporary restraining order is also in process regarding harassment and undue influence. Service will be completed within the hour." The color slid out of David's face then, not all at once, but in stages, like the tide drawing back from a flat beach. He looked at the recorder. He looked at the trust. He looked at Sarah and saw that she was no longer looking at him for answers. She was looking at me. "This is not what we talked about," he said to her, softer now, voice bending. "I said I would take care of you." She spoke very clearly. "You took care of yourself. You used my name. You used my father's house as a ladder, and you almost made me hand it to you." Her voice trembled. She steadied it with a breath. "Not anymore." Evelyn's control cracked open then. "You fool," she said to David, not even bothering to drop her voice. "You promised me the old matters would stay buried. Do you understand what he has?" She jabbed a finger toward the folders. He has the trail. He has enough to bring eyes. If the eyes come, the past comes with them. Do you want to drag me down? Do you want to drag yourself down? Is that your grand plan? The pearls seemed to rattle like small bones. He turned on her with a look I had not seen before. Not in this house. Not in any room. Mean. Hot. Helpless in its heat. You started it, he said. You taught me this. You gave me names. You said it was just how things were done. Do not leave me alone in it now. That was years ago, she said, and I did not get caught. But you got seen, I said. Linda saw you. She left me this to make sure your shadow did not reach my daughter. I tapped the box. You are not the only ones with memory. Oh. The clock struck the hour. The chime rolled through the room, slow and solemn. The sound steadied me. It seemed to steady Sarah, too. She stepped closer to me and touched the back of my chair with 2 fingers, not quite a hand on my shoulder, but close. Sarah, I said, without taking my eyes off David, you asked me last week to be happy for you. I wanted to be. Lord knows I wanted to be. I wanted to hand you my keys and say, take them, take my house, take my savings, take my time, because love multiplies what it holds. But love is not a weapon, and love is not a blindfold. Not in this house. Michael cleared his throat. There is one more matter, he said, voice gentle now, almost ceremonial. He opened a leather folder and lifted a document with an embossed seal. This is the trust instrument we filed. Effective immediately, the Walker Family Trust holds title to the residence at 1,457 Maple, with a current value of $350,000. It holds the brokerage account that was at $200,000 and is now frozen pending transfer. It holds the savings account and the policy on Linda. The trustee has sole discretion, and that trustee is me, until Sarah is ready to serve as co-trustee. All disbursements for Sarah's benefit. No control by third parties. No attachment by spouses or fiancés. Should there be a marriage, there will be a prenuptial agreement if distributions are to continue. This is not to punish, it is to protect. David's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. No words came. The papers on the table no longer looked like tools to him. They looked like a flood he could not stop. Eddie let out a quiet, satisfied breath, the kind a man gives when a stubborn bolt finally breaks loose. Mrs. Green wiped her eyes with the edge of a napkin she had tucked into her sleeve. She reached for a cookie no one would eat and broke it in half without thinking. David tried then to ignite a last fire. I will sue, he said. I will tell the court you are unstable. I will tell them that the lawyer is running you. I will get a doctor to say your memory is slipping. I will bring witnesses. You will bring witnesses, I said, and I will bring mine. I nodded toward the neighbors. I will bring the clerk at the bank who asked if I was all right because she saw how steady my hand was and how clear my words were. I will bring the pastor who saw me there every week, even when Linda was too weak to get out of bed. I will bring the men from the mill who watched me count out their overtime checks when the payroll system jammed and we had to do it by hand. I will bring Linda, too. I put my palm on her letter. She will not stand in the aisle, but she will speak. Evelyn gathered her purse. She stood with a stiff movement that looked like it hurt. We are leaving, she said to David. No, he said, not like this. He looked back at me, and for a second, the arrogance fluttered like a candle in the wind and went out. What replaced it was small and cold. You cannot keep her from me, he said, meaning Sarah. It sounded less like a threat than a plea, which made it more dangerous. I am not keeping her from anything, I said. I am freeing her from something. I looked at Sarah. What you do next is yours. I am your father. I am not your jailer. But I will not set the table for the man who tries to lock you in. Sarah's face softened and then hardened again and then softened a second time. That is how a person looks when the door in their head unlocks and they are not ready for the light yet. She nodded once, a small nod, enough for me to stand on like a rock. Michael handed David and Evelyn each an envelope. Service of notice, he said. We will speak through counsel from here. David took the envelope, looked at it like it might bite him, and shoved it under his arm. He turned to go. At the doorway he hesitated. He wanted one more victory, even a small one, a last word to wound. He could not find it. He settled for, "You will die alone in this house." I walked to the threshold and opened the door wide. The evening air cooled my face. The porch light hummed. A moth shivered around the bulb. "I have never been alone in this house," I said. "Not for 1 minute." They left. Their car started with a rough noise. The red taillights slid down the street like eyes narrowing in the dark. When the sound faded, the house exhaled. I did too. For a time, no one spoke. The room was not empty. It was full of something clean. Sarah sank into the sofa as if she had been holding her breath and finally let it go. She looked smaller and then looked stronger. She studied the edge of the rug where one thread has always been a little loose. She reached down and smoothed it. A small gesture, a repair. Michael closed his briefcase with a soft click. "We will file the last pieces in the morning," he said. "The restraining order should be signed by noon. I will send copies to the bank. The trust is already live." He paused, then added, "You handled yourself well, Tom." Mrs. Green cleared her throat and stood. She placed the plate of cookies on the table and patted my arm with the back of her fingers, a gesture from another time. "You call if you need milk," she said, as if milk were medicine. Eddie clasped my shoulder once and nodded, as if to say, "This is what a win feels like, plain and heavy and right." When they left, the house settled again. The light outside had gone from gold to blue. I turned on the lamp. The one Linda always tilted a little to the left. I did the same. Some habits you keep because they hold your heart together. Sarah looked up at me. "Dad," she said, and then she stopped. The word hung. She tried again. "Dad, I am sorry." The second time the word came out like a prayer. I kept telling myself he was trying to build our future. I told myself you were scared and stubborn. I did not want to see that I was the scared one. I did not want to see what he was. I sat beside her. The cushion sank with our weight. "We see what love lets us see," I said. "We also learn when it is time to open our eyes." I placed my hand over her hand. Her fingers were cool. "We will be all right." "I do not deserve this kindness," she whispered. "You are my daughter," I said. "That deserves every kindness I have." I let the quiet sit between us. Then I added, because it needed saying, "But kindness has boundaries. Love without boundaries becomes a rope around your throat. We will do this differently now." "Oh." She nodded, eyes wet. She wiped them with her sleeve and laughed a little at herself, the way Linda used to. "I hear you," she said. "I hear you." Michael called once more from the driveway. He wanted to confirm a detail for tomorrow. After I hung up, I walked back to the table. I stacked the folders. I placed Linda's letter on top and smoothed it. My hand lingered. I could almost feel the warmth of her hand through the paper. "We did it, Lynn," I said low. "We stood up." I washed the 2 coffee cups in the sink and left them upside down on the towel. The small chores brought my breath back to normal. I checked the back door and the side door and put the chain on the front door because I always do. Routine is a kind of prayer. Before I turned out the lights, I went to the doorway of the living room and looked once more at the table, at the lamp, at the recorder, at the plate of cookies that no one touched. The house looked ordinary again. But I knew something in its bones had shifted. It was no longer ground to be taken. It was ground that held. This will have consequences. I know that. David does not shrink when he loses. He swells. He will try to bluster. He will try to recruit sympathies. He will find a lawyer who will promise him miracles for an hourly fee. He will knock on doors that will not open. He will tell stories where he is the victim. Evelyn will pull strings from rooms I have never entered. They will be busy. They will make noise. They will be loud. I will be here. I will keep the curtains open when I need light, and close them when the sun is too much. I will answer Michael's calls. I will sign what needs to be signed. I will take Sarah to the bank to add her as beneficiary on the trust distributions under terms that do not let any man ever use her name like a lever again. I will watch the clock. Not because I am counting down to anything, but because the steady sound reminds me that a minute is a minute, and a life is just a stack of them, and what you do with one is all you can do with any of them. One honest minute at a time. I walked to the mantel and picked up a photo of Linda and me at the lake. The sky behind us is a sloppy blue. She is wearing a red sweater and laughing so hard her eyes are almost closed. My hand shook a little, not from fear, but from the weight of everything we built. I set the photo back. I touched the frame. I whispered, "Thank you for the letter. Thank you for the truth." Then I turned out the lamp and went to bed with my back straight. In the morning there will be signatures at the courthouse, a room with dark wood and a flag in the corner, and a clerk who speaks softly. There will be stamps that bite down with a satisfying clunk. There will be copies and acknowledgments, and a little yellow slip that says paid. Michael will carry his case. I will carry my old leather briefcase, the one that now holds not only papers but the shape of a life protected. When we are done, we will walk out into the sunlight. We might get coffee. We might not talk. There are silences you earn. For tonight, I am content to sit on the edge of the bed and examine the small bruise a hard day leaves. It hurts cleanly. It hurts like a shoulder that carried something heavy and put it down safely. If you have ever felt pushed aside after a lifetime of giving, if you have ever been told to sit quietly while your name and your work were cut up like a pie, then you know this ache. Feeling dismissed after a lifetime of giving is hard, isn't it? If you believe every parent deserves recognition, comment this word, truth. Now watch what they do to change that. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment below to let me know you're here with me. The courthouse stamps were barely dry when I felt the weight lift from my chest. The trust was sealed, the accounts were secured, and the house no longer dangled like bait in the mouths of greedy men. For weeks, I had carried a knot in my stomach, the kind that twisted tighter every time the phone rang or an envelope slid under my door. But that knot began to loosen the day David and Evelyn walked out of my living room in shame. Now, with the papers filed, I could finally exhale. I knew there would be noise appeals, whispers, gossip at church. But the core was solid. They had lost. I had won. Justice, at least in this house, had been done. News of their downfall spread faster than I expected. Evelyn's accounts were frozen, her reputation cracked wide open when old investigations resurfaced. She had built her life like a glass tower, and once the first pane shattered, the rest fell in sheets. David tried to salvage something, but the debt collectors came knocking, and his promises tasted like dust. I heard through a neighbor that they had moved into a small rented apartment 2 towns over. No more polished suits, no more expensive dinners, just the sound of pipes clanking at night and the embarrassment of explaining why their credit cards no longer swiped. For a man who once boasted about turning my $350,000 house into equity on tap, living in a beige rental must have been a humiliation deeper than prison. But I did not gloat. I simply let the silence between us grow until it became a wall. One morning a letter arrived. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, as though written in haste or desperation. David's name is at the bottom. "I'm sorry," it said. Sorry for the lies, for the debt, for the way he had dragged Sarah's name through mud. He asked for forgiveness, for one chance to explain. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter open, the paper trembling in my hands, though not from weakness. I folded it once, then twice, and placed it in the drawer beside Linda's old recipes. I did not burn it. I did not answer it. I understood in that moment that forgiveness is not about writing back. It is about choosing not to carry their poison in my blood. I whispered into the stillness. I don't need their words. I have my own life. With the legal battles behind me, I started to rediscover pieces of myself I had buried. I sold off one of the smaller properties land my brother and I once split in the valley for $200,000. I kept the house, the one Linda and I had built our life in, but with a portion of the sale, I created something new, the Linda Walker Scholarship Fund. $100,000, dedicated to helping children of steelworkers go to college. Linda used to tell me education was the only gift that could never be stolen. Every time I signed the fund's name on a check, it felt like her hand resting on mine again, steady and sure. I rejoined the retirees' club at the old steel mill. At first, I thought I'd just sit in the corner and drink lukewarm coffee, but soon enough I was swapping stories, playing cards, even laughing at jokes I'd heard 100 times before. Eddie sat across from me, tapping his cards on the table, reminding me that life doesn't end when your knees ache or when your family betrays you. It begins again when you choose to step back into the world. Evenings grew lighter. I planted tomatoes in the backyard, just a small row, but enough to keep my hands busy. I painted the fence again, cream, just like Sarah and I chose all those years ago. Some mornings I walked to the park, where children played tag on the grass, and old men like me fed ducks by the pond. One little boy stopped one day, pressed a dandelion into my palm, and said, "This is for you." I carried it home like it was gold. That small kindness reminded me that not all of the world is selfish. There is still goodness out there, waiting to be noticed. As for Sarah, she began visiting more often. Not every day, but often enough to remind me that the daughter I loved was still there beneath the layers David had tried to wrap around her. One evening, she sat beside me on the porch as the sun dipped low. She leaned her head on my shoulder like she hadn't done since she was a child. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm sorry." The words were fragile but real. I placed my hand over hers. "I don't need anything else," I told her. "I only need you safe." The sky turned a deep purple above us, and for the first time in months, I felt peace wrap around me like a warm blanket. Meanwhile, David and Evelyn's isolation deepened. Friends who once toasted with them at expensive restaurants stopped returning calls. Creditors circled. Evelyn's pearls were pawned, her name spoken only in whispers about scandal. David tried to start a small business, but without credit and without trust, it withered. Their circle shrank until all they had left was each other, and even that bond was poisoned by blame. I heard that their shouting matches shook the walls of that beige apartment. They had built a kingdom of greed, and now they lived among its ruins. I learned something through all this. Parents like me, we sacrifice too much, too often, thinking love will always be repaid in kind. But love without boundaries is not love. It is surrender. The lesson for parents is this: teach your children gratitude, but also teach them limits. Give them wings, but not your spine. As for children, the lesson is sharper. If you betray the hand that fed you, you will find yourself empty even when your pockets are full. Money cannot replace respect, and once respect is gone, it rarely returns. And in this modern world, where everyone chases bigger houses, faster cars, and shinier titles, the truth is simple character is the only asset that never depreciates. I say these words not as a preacher, but as a man who has felt the knife of betrayal and the balm of truth. I have walked through the fire and come out scarred, but standing. My dignity is intact, my home is safe, and my heart is lighter. As summer rolled in, I joined a volunteer group at the community center. We delivered meals to seniors who had no family left. Sometimes I'd sit at their tables, listening to their stories about sons who moved away or daughters who never called. In their faces, I saw shadows of my own pain, but also glimpses of resilience. One old woman pressed my hand and said, "You made it through. That means I can too." Her words felt like a circle closing, turning my wounds into something useful. One afternoon, as I watered my tomatoes, a letter came from a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to in decades. She had read about the scholarship fund in the local paper and wanted to thank me for keeping Linda's memory alive. She enclosed a photograph of my mother, taken long before I was born, smiling in a field of sunflowers. That picture reminded me that family is more than who lives under your roof. Family is who carries your name with respect, even across years and miles. So I end this chapter of my life not in bitterness, but in quiet triumph. I no longer wait for apologies. I no longer chase after love that was weaponized against me. I sit on my porch, the boards creaking under my chair, and I watch the world move on. Sarah beside me, the sound of children in the distance, the scent of tomatoes on my hands. I whisper to Linda, "We're all right now." And for the first time, I believe it. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: parents must love with strength, not blind surrender. Children must honor the shoulders they stand on. And in this modern world, never forget character outlives money. Dignity outshines greed. Respect is the only inheritance worth fighting for. Now I want to hear from you. What lesson did you take from this story? Share it in the comments below so together we can remind our children and grandchildren of what truly matters. The story has come to an end. I hope it has brought you valuable lessons and insights. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next video. Goodbye, and see you again.